trying to put some things together to give basically everybody in this county a win on some things. And Brookhaven, by the way, is one of the big winners. They're going to get about $47 million over the next 6 years for transportation and infrastructure improvements. I think Stonecrest is the other $47 million winner. I think Dunwoody's about $44 million. But there's a couple of elements here, and there's three items on your ballot, so you understand. The first one, some of you will remember this, years ago, and I guess Bart Ladd was the one that did the legislation a long time ago, where we have the HOST, Homestead Option Sales Tax. And currently, what happens, 80% of that money that's raised from that tax comes back to you as homeowners in property tax relief, and another 20. Oh yeah. Okay, and another 20%. Okay, another 20%. See, he knows where the mics are. You know, you gotta love it. I mean, really, what a nice play on words. The other 20% goes for capital improvements, and at the present time, DeKalb County gets about $2 million of that 20%. And the cities get 20 million plus. Okay, so you can't do a whole lot with 2 million. So that being said, the first ballot item takes that homestead up to 100% property tax relief. And if you look at it, here where we live, probably for a $200,000 home, you're going to save about $400 on your property tax. So you figure out what your home's worth, and if it's worth $400,000, you can do the math at this point in time, even without a calculator. So first of all, we got property tax relief. That's the first item on the ballot. The second item is the splost. And the first two have to pass. And I'll get to why for the third one. The splost, for the first time ever in the state of Georgia, we limited the splost. I didn't think that we really wanted to see a government center on Cynthia McKinney Boulevard. No. And I think we got 400 miles of unpaved roads. We've got a lot of infrastructure needs that you all just talked about with your sewers and this kind of thing. So we limited the categories the money could be spent in. And most of the money, and Michael will talk about this, is going to go for transportation, as it should be. Sidewalks, paving, intersection improvements, paving the roads, etc., okay? Particularly in the unincorporated areas, and the city has their portion to use for that, okay? And that's very, very important, because what's going to happen now, the unincorporated areas who get the $2 million, they will now get $60 million a year. And some things can be done that have been neglected for probably 20 years, way before Michael and way before me at that point. So I think that's very important. But what we did, and Michael came to me with this, he said, look, we're giving property tax relief in the first item. The second item, if we're going to raise the sales tax by 1 penny, it doesn't apply to pharmaceuticals. But Michael said, what about unprepared food, which means Publix, Kroger's, etc.? It does not apply to food. So most of the people, particularly senior citizens, of which I qualify, okay, most of the money we spend today are on pharmaceuticals and drugs, okay? So, and particularly in the lower economic means, I'm not looking at you, sir, don't take it that way. I'm sure it's not looking at a woman, I can tell you that for sure, okay? So, and that's a good thing, okay, because you're going to give property tax relief here. The people of lower economic means, let's not penalize them when one of their biggest purchases is food. Okay, so again, I think what you're going to see, the money, now, I will tell you a little bit of disappointment for me. We don't have necessarily specific projects, but for example, on the streets and roads, they've graded all the roads in the county, okay? So they know from a list of where they're going to put the money. And the commissioners have been involved, and the money's spread out through all the districts. And so I think you're going to, unlike the school system, which I did not vote for, we gave them a blank check with no projects, which may be one of the dumbest things I've seen done in DeKalb in a long time. This at least has the categories, and there is a plan by the commissioners of where we're spending the money before you vote. Okay, the last thing. Probably 10 years ago, I passed a property tax freeze as respects city and county taxes, where your home value is capped, okay? Going back to about 2009. I'll use my own home as an example. My house today is probably valued at about $630,000, $40,000. The most it ever was valued at was $706,000. What I'm telling you, in the next decade, 10 years from now, okay, the value of my home for city and county taxes cannot exceed $706,000 unless I sell it or unless I do extensive remodeling. And with the values of what's going to happen around here, with what's happened with the town of Brookhaven and Dunwoody where I live, values are going to explode around here. So someday a house could be worth $200,000 more than what it is now. For the city and county, it's going to be capped at that particular max number. That's big from a standpoint of your future taxes. It's much better than, quite frankly, and I represent Fulton County. They have a cap of 3% per year. It can go up. Well, after 10 years, do the math at 3% for 10 years. And people really aren't coming out ahead as well. So I think we've done very well with the cap. So if we pass the first two, the 100% e-host they call it, and we pass the splost, that's the second part, then the tax freeze I just talked about, as long as those two are enforced, basically becomes permanent. My friends on the other side of the aisle down there kept trying to put a sunset clause on it for 5 years. We won't have to worry about this. So when Fran's gone, God willing, and you voted on it, that freeze becomes permanent. So that's basically the three items on the ballot. Okay, and that's really all we have, other than if you have, we don't have a mayor's race, but if you have commissioner races, that type of thing. I think, is it Commissioner Gebbia? Joe Gebbia?
District 4.
Yeah, District 4. You got
And John Park, District 2 is running, but he's on post.
But he's on a post, so you really got, that's it on the ballot. And you can, up here, you can early vote only in Dunwoody at this point. Otherwise, it's election day for people. So, Michael, I think that's all I got, bud. I mean, I'm done. I mean, you know.
Can you define extensive renovation?
Yeah, I think so. When, for example, I added a new deck on the back of my house, okay, after 25 years. And based upon the code, which is the state's fault, not mine, okay, my house may fall down after an earthquake, but I promise you that erector set known as my deck, it's not going anywhere. Or if you remodel a bathroom or added, you finished your basement, that type of thing. And that's based upon when they come out and assess your homes, okay? Because they do, you know, they come out.
Is that your deck considered extensive or just a replacement?
Not if I don't, well, I had to get a permit for it, but I'm not advertising I did it, okay? So, I mean, they know I've got a permit for it, so
Well,
they.
it says you're required to do it.
Yeah, that's all right. So if they come out and check my house, then yeah, that's how it'll change, to be honest with you. So I think,
anytime you apply for a building permit,
I think so, yeah, they have the option to do that, but again, it depends what your home's worth and what you're putting in it from a number standpoint.
it's one thing to put a big wing on
Right.
versus just repairing the roof and things
That's,
like that.
I don't think, a roof renovation's not gonna.
But I'd like to see that defined.
Well, that's part of the thing, I think.
Taxes.
It's sort of the assessor's got their guidelines of what it would be. And I tell you, before you do the renovation, call and ask them. Give them your neighbor's name, but go ahead and call and ask them. Okay, but I would go ahead and ask them.
When does this, assuming the splost things pass?
Yes.
When does this freeze on the property value take effect?
The freeze is in force right now, but with the recession, most people's homes has not quite gotten back to their cap value. But as we continue to go forward, okay, that's when the value will go over. You right now on your I'll call it your assessment bill, there's a code on there, and you can check and call, and they'll tell you you've got the freeze already. You've probably got it already.
Mine jumped up a lot this past year.
Now here's what. No, that's your tax bill. The reason being it doesn't apply to the schools, but the value of your home for city and county taxes is frozen, but not for the school value. We've never done it for the schools.
Oh.
Now, perhaps some people think we should, because DeKalb County has up to 25 mills for schools. That's one of the 3 or 4 counties in the state that has more than 20 mills, but that's another subject. But right now, it's just for, so you've basically got 2 separate values. Let's say 5 years from now, take my house, let's say it's now worth $740,000. That's what my school thing's going to be at, 40% of that number for schools. And the 706 would be the number for the city and county taxes. 2 separate numbers. You don't see the calculation, but it's there.
Well, and in fact, I want to just add a little bit. In Brookhaven, you actually have 3. So you have the schools, which is the value they give to you, the assessor every year. You have whatever the county freeze was put in when
Right.
The bill was put, that number. And in Brookhaven, by charter, once you became a city, we froze it at the rate.
Oh, that number, that's right, for you all. That's right.
At the rate of what your value was
At that time, he's right.
Of the value of the property.
Everybody's a little bit different. Each
So-
city's a little bit different.
Because I think your freeze in Dunwoody
From the get-go.
came at the exact same
Right,
time.
ours came at the same time in Dunwoody.
So Brookhaven, we have 3 numbers.
Yeah.
So it's not very easy. I wish we could talk about how the tax bill is different, so they just show which number instead of giving you a freeze. But that's
Yeah.
I guess there's no chance for the senior citizen property owner to not have to pay into the school.
I don't think so. I don't think you can get that passed in DeKalb County for seniors like we have in Cobb County, for example. But here's the problem now. Cobb County and some of the other counties that have that, now they've got a tremendous shortfall over there, and they've got some real problems over there. And I will tell you,
The aging of the population.
yeah, at one time I thought, well, maybe that'd be a pretty good idea for senior citizens because they've paid this whole time. But your problem is, it can catch up with you and bite you, and that's what we're starting to see over in Cobb now. I would rather have that everybody have a freeze, everybody have a freeze. And I think that plays a lot better. Yeah, look, as a politician, to pass a senior exemption would be to my benefit, because people that are 50 years old and older, they're the ones that vote. But from a standpoint of long run, good public policy, probably not that good idea. I don't think a cap's a good idea, like 3% a year,
Right.
because I think that doesn't do anything, because they're going to get you. It's sort of like a tuition freeze for college. Let's freeze tuitions, and 3 years later come back and get a 15% increase.
Right.
So you just, and I tell you what happened today, for example. Fulton County's played some games. You know, they tried to, okay, they screwed up, and they said, okay, let's do this. Let's roll back to last year's values. Let's use those just for this year, because people are getting hit. And guess what? The revenue department downtown, they said, you can only do that type of activity if there was an error made. There wasn't any error, they threw it out.
Really?
And the people in Fulton County are getting ready to get popped big time, because they don't have the freeze.
You're gonna all move to Cobb.
They might move to Mike. They might move to DeKalb since Michael's doing such a great job as city. Yeah, you know. Because again, to be fair to him, okay, and we're pretty good friends, okay. We don't always agree. We didn't agree on some things when he was in charge of the schools, but he inherited a mess, okay, with this water thing and the sewage thing, and he's got some time and he's been working on it to try to get this fixed. But it didn't happen overnight. You know, there's not too many people I know that walk on water, but he's making a real effort to try to get that particular. That's the biggest issue the county faces right now.
Absolutely.
So anyway, I'll stop there, Michael.
No, keep going.
Like I said, I gotta get the car started for you.
Let's give the senator a round of applause. Thank you, Senator. Before I speak of my senator, I want to first thank Mayor Arntz and City Councilman and Christian and others for the invitation first to come tonight and for your support and your friendship and your ability and willingness to work with the county government. And it's been a great relationship, and I enjoy it. Honest, we're not sensitive, you're not sensitive, but we've been able to make progress, so I thank you for that. And I want to thank Senator Miller for leading the effort to being the primary signer on our splost legislation. As he stated during the legislature, Ms. Dolores and he were there more than I, but we debated and we fussed, and shouldn't say it on tape, but we cussed each other from time to time. Every day. But at the end of the day, what we decided was that we would do what's in the best interest of the majority of the people of this county. And I think through his involvement and our involvement, we have a piece of legislation that provides a historic amount of tax relief to residential property owners in DeKalb County. I ain't really thought about it, but one day I was thinking, that's $100 million a year in tax relief for 6 years. It's unprecedented. And you add the $10 million annually that goes to reducing the regressivity of the sales tax on senior citizens and fixed income individuals, that's another $10 million. And believe it or not, and I heard Dick Williams say it one day on Georgia Game, our tax structure, we have, compared to other metro counties, taxes are lower in DeKalb County than just about any other county. A lot of it due to this man than any other county in metro Atlanta. And you mentioned senior citizens and school taxes. Our senior citizen exemption, income exemption, is much more generous than the one they have in Atlanta. So even at that,
What's it that?
I think it's $80,000, isn't it?
I think he's right.
Yeah, it's $80,000.
80 or 84,000.
84,000, I think that's what it is. Extremely generous compared to other counties and cities in metro Atlanta. So that's a news flash that we have low taxes in DeKalb County, Georgia. That's an applause line in most of it. But Senator Miller has gone through, and Mayor Arntz has talked about it. We're excited about this. I can't advocate on behalf of the splost legislation. I'm prohibited from doing it. I can't ask you to vote for it. I can tell you how I'm going to vote. I'm going to vote yes in support of the legislation. It is, as the mayor stated, a transformative moment. And as Senator Miller said, it resulted from us coming together, not just Republicans and Democrats under the Gold Dome, but also our municipal and county leaders are standing together to do what I think is a piece of legislation that's going to transform our county. But beyond the investment, the capital investment, that's going to help us develop a Class 1 fire service in this county, the roads and the bridges and the streets and the trails. The thing that's most invaluable that I can't put a price on is that we've opened up the lines of communication. And recognizing that we don't have to always agree, we will never always agree, but the one thing we will agree not to be disagreeable, and that we're going to work together. We may disagree, but we're going to work together for the best interest of the people of DeKalb County, Georgia. I can't put a price on that. And that's more valuable than the $600 million investment in capital improvement, is more valuable than the $600 million in tax relief, is that now we can sit down at the table and talk about the problems honestly, develop the solutions, and implement the strategies that's going to create a better life for all of our citizens. So with that, I'll stop. Thank the Senator again for being there. Thank the Mayor, Christian, all of you all. I've been here on multiple occasions. I always enjoy my visits to Brookhaven.
And I forgot something. You all are going to be receiving something in the mail about this. There's a document, 2-page document voters will be getting about the splost. It's an educational piece. It was on Facebook tonight. Did the county pay for this? The answer is no. This was done through private funds for educational purposes. So that's not your tax money to pay for this thing you get in the mail, just so everybody know that. I think that you probably will get it probably the next day or two. And I know somebody got it today, and that's where I first heard it from. But it is paid for by private funds. And unlike Michael, yes, I can advocate for it, and yeah, I'm voting for it. I wouldn't have written the bill if I hadn't voted for it. So anyway, John?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, again, thanks you guys so much. Is there any questions in the Facebook world?
Not at the moment.
Okay, is there any questions? Joe?
What percentage of the sales tax is paid by people outside the county? Has
That's a great
anybody-
question.
I think that would be a selling point that.
No, that's a great
getting
question.
It is a good point. Thank you for bringing that up. Traditionally, it's probably 35 to 40% from people outside the county. And let me give you an example. And John, I worked on this with John. I worked on that with Denny Shortle and Dunwoody, Frank Allman and Tucker. We just passed an increase that they can increase the hotel and motel tax, okay, from 5 to 8%, okay? And the reason being, we know who stays, unless you're having a wedding, we know who stays in hotels, and it's not people that live in our area, okay? And that money's going to be used, that's your green space funding. When you, all the stuff we're going to be doing for green space, we both are here, both in Chamblee, okay, in Dunwoody, et cetera, that's all being paid for. That's basically paid for by people. But traditionally, if you look at the retail environment, which is your big expenditure, and since food's not in this now, unprepared food, excuse me, which means grocery stores, probably 35 to 40% traditionally is what people say is paid for by sales tax. People do not live here. That's a traditional number.
One more question.
Sure. I'm not that good, but keep going.
Yeah, I know, well, you're damn good. In the flyer, you estimate for a certain price house, and you said it also for a different price.
Right.
What the host savings would be if this
That's
passes.
right.
But there is a sales tax that goes to the people. And of course, how much they pay each year is based on their income level or their expenditure. Has anybody done an analysis, and I don't, through ARC or whoever,
Right.
of saying that if you make $40,000 a year, you would pay X number of dollars in extra sales tax that then can be rationalized against, if you're a property owner, the savings from the e-host? I'm sorry, I'm
No,
a
they've done-
retired engineer. And
Yeah, I understand.
I'm your worst nightmare.
Well, no. Actually, I think Mark Nisi asked the question with AJC, and it depends on, it's a consumption tax. So hypothetically, you could earn $40,000, but if you don't spend a lot, then of course your sales tax bill would be lower, or you could make less and spend more. The reason it's regressive is that people with lower income use more of their disposable income. So that's why it's hard. It depends on your consumption patterns.
No, I understand.
Yeah.
But through averages or statistics.
I would tell you this, what I told people, I said, look, if you take, for example, a home where you're gonna save, let's just say the $400, okay? And you look at your own individual expenditures. And remember, we don't do a sales tax on cars anymore. We do that, that's another story, but we do that title thing. That's an awful lot of sales tax you're paying when it doesn't apply to food and pharmaceuticals. You're talking about paying basically, 40,000 plus, so 40,000 plus of sales tax. And if you're not paying on groceries and you're not paying and purchases, that's right, purchases, unless somebody in your family's gone wild on Amazon Prime, you're going to probably come out ahead. I tell you where we really win, and quite frankly, particularly the incorporated areas do better. Now, people say, well, that doesn't seem fair to the unincorporated areas. But the difference is they're getting 60% of the money for the infrastructure. And I say, look, folks, today they get $2 million. They're going to get $60 million. We tried to make this so everybody got something out of it. Because that's all people care about at the end of the day. What's in it for me? Right, wrong, or indifferent. You can be an idealist, but what's in it for me? So we tried to do the best job we could. Is it perfect? No, it's not perfect. But at the end of the day, it's pretty interesting to me that nobody else has ever limited the splost and done what we did in this particular case. And that's a good thing for the citizens of DeKalb in general.
We got away from the zero-sum politics. If you win, that means I lose. And what we tried to come up with was a plan so that everyone could walk away feeling better. Not getting everything he or she might want, but can look at it and say, you know what, I'm better off.
But he did abuse me.
Yeah.
Just so you know.
And while they set it up, I can talk about with the city and the county, with the numbers, the county, by the legislation, could have really cut myself, Stonecrest, others, Tucker out of the equation completely because it was based on 2010 census. Well, we weren't the cities in 2010.
Right.
And so the county and the cities all worked together to come up with population numbers that were fair based on, I think, last year's
16.
The 16. And we all agreed to it. And that's allowed Brookhaven to receive more money than it would have otherwise by the reading of the legislation. I can tell you, last year, before the splost was coming, that was a major contention between the cities and the county that wasn't looking like it was going to be solved. And it was looking like, well, that's what the legislation says, that's what we're going to do. We all agreed that it was not going to be productive. And the cities and the county worked together to make that right for everyone.
Understand, too, we do legislation. If it was perfect, we wouldn't be going down there every January to rewrite bills, okay? And we probably need to tweak this one and a few other ones down the road. And that's a good example of it. But reasonable people got together to make the thing work. I mean, this is historic when you stop and think about it here in DeKalb County, where all the cities have signed on this program because they all realized it was in everybody's best interest to go ahead and do this. I mean, we've gone through this sewer problem, okay? And people say, that's not the only problem we got. This gentleman's he's sitting there. That's what he deals with every day. God bless you, okay? So we're trying to deal with that problem now over the next decade, and so it doesn't happen again down the road.
No, I'm not disputing or criticizing.
No, I know.
Yeah.
But the arguments that have been made today are not in the press. And to educate the voter as to the benefits.
Look at my Facebook page tomorrow.
Especially
Yeah.
without a detailed project.
Right. And I think when you get the mailer, which you all will get, it does a nice job on that. And when I put it on Facebook, I tried to highlight a few things. If you live in the unincorporated, those are the people who think that maybe they're not getting a fair shake, okay? Sort of like my church when they did a building program between the contemporary and the traditional worship. Somebody always thinks they're not getting a fair shake. I said, $2 million, $60 million. Think about it. So, but you're right. But I think when you see that, I think they've done a nice job on the educational piece that was put out by the third party.
And I don't have any direct control over it, but I'm almost certain that your question will be aired multiple times on DC TV over the next 10 to 14 days. That's why they are here, so that thousands will hear your question and the senator and the mayor's answer to your question.
And to kind of go about the project list, because it kind of segues into your question, what is Brookhaven going to do? The county has their list,
Right.
but most of you guys, Brookhaven residents, about $47 million over that 6 years. 14 million of it's going to paving maintenance. That's our paving program. We have already, it's getting in line to get our CPIs in, I think, is it going to be in the mid 80s by the end of this?
In 5 years, yes.
In 5 years?
Yeah, we're at 68 now, we should be in the 80s by.
Tell them about CPI.
Yeah, CPI is a PCI. PCI is basically a scientific formula. We have a laser truck that went over all the roads, judged the roads based on their condition scientifically. We here in Brookhaven basically said to our department, I thank the council for saying we don't care about which district gets what. We say our whole system is a system. We want to spend the money as efficiently and cost effectively as possible. We have gone from, when I came in, from an 63, which is below average in the country, 65. We have now, already in 2 years, got to 68. By the end of 5 years, we'll be at 82, which I believe is going to be the best rated roads in the entire Southeast. And so now Sandy Springs and others may start seeing this and done, what do you want to spend some more? But we're doing that on a scientific level. We're $11 million on transportation improvements. That is going to our comprehensive transportation plan, Ashford Dunwoody traffic study plans. So those things have been laid out. Those are going to be being done, and some other items there. We'll probably have some more studies then. $15 million is going to public safety facilities and equipment. Our cops will have make sure we have the new cars, and we will probably have a police department, a new police department, and municipal court system that gets paid for that. And then $7 million is going to existing capital asset management, and that is parks and stormwater. That is the limit that the legislature in their infinite wisdom gave, is 15%, and that will allow us to do park asset management in our parks, in our stormwater. So that's where we're spending the money. Now, some people say, well, I don't know what exact road is going to be done, or I can tell you about paving, but what transportation? We left it up to future councils to decide the priorities. We have the money coming in. We didn't want to limit ourselves to just that. We are allowing the council, as time goes on, to make those things. And we also might have something like big transportation where we have a GDOT match. We need to save our money, and we may not know that gets there or not. So we want to have some flexibility.
I was remiss too, and this is because of Michael, because originally when I did the legislation, we did not have public safety facilities and their equipment in there. And Michael said, look, we need for police, we need more stations, we need equipment. Same thing for fire, this type of thing. So that was one of the things that he came back to me with, and I agreed that and the reason that the capital repair is limited to 15%, I didn't want to put together a potential with the commissioners, not him, but the commissioners, to have some kind of a slush thing that I didn't really care for, okay? That's why it's limited at 15%. That's the reason. But the reason for the public safety facilities and equipment is because of Michael, and he's absolutely right, so that's why that's in there.